Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Wanderlust Wednesdays. This is the weekly webinar series in which we take you on fantastic voyages all around the world. My name is Lori Overton. I am the owner of Overton Travel, and I am your host for this webinar series. And as you can see by the screen, today we are taking you to Israel. Oh my goodness. So many people have asked me, Lori, when you going to Israel? When you going to Israel? And we'll be going there hopefully in the near future. But right now we're going to Israel virtually today. And we have an amazing presentation in store for you. You'll learn about some of the common things, and then we're going to sneak in a couple of good nuggets for you as well today. So sit back, relax, call your friends, call your neighbors, whomever, and say, hey, join the webinar either on Zoom or join us by Facebook, because you're in for a treat for the next hour. So we have two amazing presenters from the Israel Ministry of Tourism that's going to give us information about Israel. But before we get into the presentation, I got a couple of house rules for you, or housekeeping notes. Number one, this is a webinar format. In a webinar format, you can see me, you can see whoever is speaking, you can hear us, but we cannot see nor hear you. So the only way that you can communicate with us is through the chat box and the Q&A box. So use the chat box to say hi, to say oohs and ahs. That's great. Also, if you're a first-time viewer to Wanderlust Wednesday, just say hi in the chat box. Let us know you're a first-time viewer, and we'd like to welcome you. For those of you who are joining us via Facebook Live, if you have any questions, put them in the comment section and we'll be manning those. You'll either see responses from myself or Donna Snyder in Facebook. Also, for those of you who are joining us by Zoom, put your questions in the Q&A box and we will get to all of your questions, I promise you, at the end of the presentation. So, all right, so now that we have the house rules in place, I want to start by taking a poll. So I want to see how many of you on the line, on the call, have been to Israel already. So let me launch this poll, and I want to see who we got here. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to let us know. And if you're on Facebook, you can type yes or no in the comment section as well and let us know. All right, you got about 10 more seconds to get your responses in. Most of you have responded. For those of you who can't find your poll, I'll give you 3 more seconds. And if not, then you got to join us on the next one. Okay, so the poll is ending. And we have 89% have not been to Israel. All right, woohoo! So this is going to be a treat for you. 11% of you have been to Israel, so you already know what you're in store for today. You're going to go down memory lane, and I can guarantee you, even though you've been to Israel, we're going to show you something that you didn't know about or that you didn't see on your previous trip. So sit tight. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Sarah Mond, and we had Jill Daly from the Israel Ministry of Tourism. These guys are experts in Israel, and they are going to tell us so much information today. So the primary speaker will be Jill. She will be doing the presentation, and Sarah will be on board to answer any questions that may come up as well. So we got 2 folks today, so we're in for a double treat. So I am now going to turn this over to Jill. So it's all yours.
Thank you. So I am really excited to be here. It's a great opportunity, and I'm just going to pull up my screen really quick. So excuse the housekeeping of that, but I'm really excited to be here today and to be able to talk about Israel. I have had the privilege of working for the Israel Ministry of Tourism for, 8 years now that I've been with the Ministry of Tourism. And before that, I worked for their advertising agency. So Israel's been a place that is just very near and dear to my heart. So I was extremely excited when Lori had invited me to come and talk about Israel. It's my favorite place. I've had the opportunity, like I think many of you, I've traveled around the world. I've seen a lot of different places, but Israel is one of those places that I continue to come back to every year. I love it. I feel at home, and I just have that connection to Israel. But I did want to start before the presentation. It just seems the new norm, but I wanted to just give a brief update in terms of how travel is right now. Can you travel to Israel? Is it possible amongst what's going on with COVID? The very short answer of that is no. Right now, our borders are closed to travelers. We shut the borders down right away when COVID became something that was, looking to be that it was going to be a problem, and that it was a safety issue. So we closed our borders and have yet to reopen. However, we have been going through the process in terms of reopening, and we've had the opportunity to reopen for our domestic tourism, which is a great thing because it's given us the opportunity to open the hotels again, and what the hotels are going to look like post-COVID. Open a lot of the sites and what that looks like as well post-COVID. And what I can tell you is for the hotels, just like here in the US, there's a lot of increased social distancing. There is the antibacterial gel throughout. They have extended hours in the dining rooms, just for the fact that knowing that there is a limited capacity of people that are able to come in, and they want to be able to accommodate everyone. They've also updated filtration systems as well. So they've really done a lot for the hotels to ensure the safety of travelers and to ensure the safety of those that are wanting to visit Israel. The other thing is our national parks. They have done a lot in terms of updating and their systems and how they handle things that allow for the increased social distancing. They have new timed systems so that Lori would schedule the time that you as a group would be there, say 10 a.m. at a site, and you have your matching bracelets that say you're able to be admitted at 10. Usually it's a 2-hour window to get through the site, and then it gives the opportunity to move along for the next groups that are coming through as well. So it's a great opportunity for the social distancing to be in place and to ensure the safety. So it is something that we are continuing to monitor. We are continuing to watch and decide when is the safest and the best time for both citizens and travelers to be able to come back to Israel. One of the very encouraging things to note, though, is that the airlines are already beginning to fly. What that means is they are flying for Israel citizens. So those with an Israel passport from the US going back to Israel are able to fly, as well as some US citizens that have special permission. And usually this is life and death kind of situation, emergencies that they've been given permission from the consular. So it's not necessarily just a traveler that wants to go. Everybody entering Israel does need to go through a 14-day quarantine upon entering Israel. So what we're really trying to do is making sure that when we open again, we open and you're not coming to stay in a hotel for 14 days and then track your travel. We want to be able to open safely so that when you land in Israel, you can immediately begin enjoying Israel and immediately begin enjoying your trip. So I'm going to cover a little bit in terms of the airlines, and we'll talk about some of the different things, but I wanted to just start out with just a general of Israel with the logistics. I know some of you have said that you've been there and most have not, which is great. I always love that question. When Lori said she was going to ask that poll, I thought, oh, thank you so much, because I love to know who's been and who hasn't. So just a little bit on the logistical end of things for Israel is located on the Mediterranean Sea. So when you are traveling, you will be traveling to Tel Aviv, which is our main airport within Israel. From there, then you will start your tour. But one of the things I wanted to really give you the opportunity to see is Israel is approximately the size of New Jersey, the state of New Jersey. So it's not a big area. What that means to you is you really have the luxury of size. And we were joking that I live in Chicago. I just recently went to visit my brother who lives in Pittsburgh. It was a 7-hour drive. And in Israel, driving top to bottom 7 hours, I'm no longer in Israel. It is not that big of a country that you can drive top to bottom in less than that 7-hour period of me driving from Chicago to Pittsburgh. And speaking just a little bit more on the luxury of size, what that means is like Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, it's only 50 minutes from each other. It's not far. Or Jerusalem to the Dead Sea is 45 minutes. Because one of the things that Laurie and I talked about when we were talking about putting together this presentation is you can easily stay in Jerusalem, however, decide that you want to spend a day down at the Dead Sea and you want that luxury and that spa and to be able to float in the Dead Sea. And we're going to talk about that a little later, but it's just a 45-minute drive. So it's really very close anywhere that you are pretty much in Israel. In terms of those airlines that I spoke of, there are a number of nonstop flights from the US, and they will be coming back as travel resumes. One of the things that we're really, really excited about is, during this pandemic, as we've seen, the airline industry has pulled back. The travel industry has pulled back right now in terms of waiting for travel to resume again. In the midst of that, United Airlines announced and launched a brand new nonstop flight on September 10th from from Chicago to Tel Aviv. So it really speaks very well to the destination and the promise of what travel is going to be when travel returns. We're excited as well because American announced that they are going to be doing nonstop from DFW in 2021. So these are really positive signs in terms of travel and resuming of travel. You have some of those destinations that are beginning to open up and welcome travelers back, which is really exciting. But what happens when the airline doesn't have the flights available quite yet and have to scramble to resume those flight services? As the nice thing with Israel is those services have already resumed with a lot of the US cities. United actually has flown nonstop throughout the pandemic, daily service from EWR. So we're really excited about that. And, it really does speak very well to what it looks like in terms of the destination moving forward. And just a couple little housekeeping things. For those that are avid travelers, just to know, no visas are required. You just need a valid passport when you're entering Israel. The other thing is Israel no longer stamps the passports. So for those that are traveling, and I mean, one of the exciting things is we're seeing more and more. We see the new peace agreement with the United Arab Emirates that has happened between Israel and UAE just recently. But that we understand there's some places in the world that still doesn't allow the Israel passport stamp. So we no longer stamp Israel passports. There's no need for a second passport. We are very much a first world country. Any place you go, you'll have a lot of the same amenities in Israel as you will here, and things that you're accustomed to. So the 4-star hotels, the 5-star hotels that you're accustomed to here in the US, you have those same luxuries in Israel as well. And the other thing is English is widely spoken and understood throughout the country. As I mentioned, I'm a traveler. I have had the opportunity and privilege to travel many places in the world. I laugh because there's sometimes you get someplace and they're like, oh, bilingual staff throughout the resort, no problem. And you find there's maybe 2 people on the resort that actually speak English, and you got to find them at the time that you need to speak. But in Israel, English is widely spoken and understood. Road signs, street signs are in English. Menus are in English. Just about anything you can find, it is in English, and you'll have no problem being able to navigate and getting around. But as we were preparing for this, I really had the opportunity to talk to Lori a little bit about what are some of the things that you're looking for as her client. What are the trips that she likes to take, and where are the places that she likes to take you to and the experiences? So I want to talk a little bit and walk through kind of what an itinerary would look like. Some of the places that you can count on seeing as part of a trip that you would take with Lori as she begins to look at putting together this trip. And one of the things that I talked about is, she said that she'd like to be able to include a lot of those Christian sites. And one of my favorite things to do is when I do a trip to Israel is I love to be able to do those Christian sites and kind of do them almost in order of what Jesus's ministry would have been. So I love to land in Tel Aviv, and I like to head north right away. And some of the places that you're going to see in terms of heading north is one of the first stops is along the Mediterranean, and it's Caesarea. Caesarea was built by Herod the Great. and was a major port city during its time. It was the administration center for the Judea province during the Roman Empire. So having the opportunity to go, to be able to visit and see that place and stand where Pontius Pilate was found to have been there as well, and part of it. And one of the really neat things today, and I'm so sorry because I don't think that you can actually see my cursor as I move it around, but kind of the larger picture here is the group. I had the privilege of working with a group of Baptist pastors, and we were there and having the opportunity to sit in the amphitheater at Caesarea. And one of the really cool things, and I really recommend that if you have someone in the group that has an amazing voice or loves to sing, this is the perfect place, because the acoustics to be able to sing and to be able to hear there is just a really great opportunity. Also here, you will find that during the summertime especially, they do put on concerts. So there's still the opportunity to sit in this amphitheater from thousands of years ago and hear concerts along the way. And then moving a little bit further is Nazareth. We all know Nazareth. If you're familiar with the Bible and the biblical teachings, we know that this is the home of Jesus. This is where Jesus's boyhood home was. This is where he was raised, and where he would have called home. It would have been at the time of Jesus, a very small little town. The neighboring town of Zippori would have been the large city at the time. So when Jesus talks in the Bible and he talks about the city, he's not talking about Nazareth and those parables, but he's talking about Zippori, which is very close to Nazareth as well. But in Nazareth, you have the opportunity to see the Church of the Annunciation. And one of the very cool things that I love about the Church of the Annunciation is you have the opportunity to see these statues of Mary, the Virgin Mary, from all over the world, from many countries who have sent these beautiful statues, and they line the outside of the church, and they line the church as a memorial, as an honor to Mary, the Virgin Mother. Moving a little bit more to the Galilee area, and one of the places that we kind of joked about when we talked about is on the way from Nazareth to the Galilee area, you have Cana. And from what Lori tells me is that her groups, they love wine, and they love good wine. This is the place of Jesus's first miracle. It's the place where Jesus turned water into wine at the wedding. So you do have the opportunity to visit there as well as having the opportunity, if anybody in the group would like to get their wedding vows renewed, you can do that here at Cana. But moving from Cana into the Galilee, Mount Arbel. Mount Arbel is right along the shores of the Sea of Galilee. It's beautiful because it has views of all of the Galilee, all of Tiberias, with views of Mount Hermon into the Golan Heights. It's here that the Jewish people from the Second Temple period had cliff dwellings within the cliffs that you can actually walk and see, or take the opportunity to just walk up to Mount Arbel. And it's not a hard hike. I was actually with a guide, and he's like, oh, it's going to be so hard of a hike. It's easy. This is actually not a bad hike, but it's beautiful to have a great picture to start your trip within the Galilee, to be able to be at Mount Arbel and to oversee all of the region that you're about to visit. From there, one of my favorite places, and one of the things that we kind of talk about on your trip is you always have those special moments. Like everybody's kind of waiting for that special, epiphany moment. And it might not be that great moment, but it might be that moment that sticks with you. And the thing that I always say is it changes. It changes with each one of your trips that you take. That I feel like wherever you are in your life at that time, there's a different way that you're hit by certain places, and a different way that you're touched by certain places. And when I said trip, I did say trips, because I do always say that while the first trip to Israel is amazing, it's the second trip to Israel that's your best trip. That's the trip you're going to be more relaxed. You're not going to be taking all the photos. You're actually going to be able to see things. But the Sea of Galilee was always one of those special places for me, because we know there's so many sites within Israel that there's either they talk about it being the site of tradition, or we know for a fact that it happened there. In so many of the sites, it is a traditional site where they believe that this was, or around here is where it happened. But for me, the Sea of Galilee is one of those places we know Jesus was there. We know this is where he and his disciples were, where they spent their daily lives, where Jesus did his teachings, was here along the Sea of Galilee. And one of the things that you have the opportunity to do, and it's one of those things that I really do recommend, because it's the special moment of having the opportunity to go out on the Sea of Galilee on one of these replica boats from the time of Jesus. So the boat that you'll see kind of in the middle of the screen there, it's what it would have looked like at the time of Jesus. But the really, really interesting thing is right there at the Sea of Galilee, where you're actually able to go out on the boat, there is the museum there, which is I'm going to tell you now, I'm terrible about my Hebrew pronunciations, even when I've worked at Israel for as long as I have, but it's the Haggai Alon Galilee Museum, which is at the Kibbutz Gennesaret. And that boat here on the very right-hand side of your screen that you'll see, it is a first century boat that they found. So they know that this was from the time of Jesus. Do they know if Jesus and his apostles were on that boat? No, they're not able to date that. However, they can date it back to the biblical times. So this is very much like what one of the boats would have looked like. And it could very probably be one of the boats that they were on. But it was found along the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee in 1986, when there was a drought. Two brothers were walking along the shore and they found it. It was a major production to be able to bring it up, because it was taking it out of the water was almost destroying it immediately. However, they were able to save it. And you have the opportunity to go and see this. They believe this boat in particular probably would have been used for about a century, because they found many places where there's many different types of wood and materials where they would have patched it time and time again to be able to continue to use it. So having that opportunity. And one of the things that I talked about is those special moments. And I just wanted to share one of the moments for me is, and this is what I mean in Israel, is you have this connection to your faith, you have this connection to your history. And I was walking along the shores of the Sea of Galilee one morning. I am a very early riser, always, much earlier than my groups. So I tend to get up and I tend to walk. I tend to do, walk in the morning, do my prayers, or just taking the quiet moments. And I had that opportunity that I was walking along the shores of the Sea of Galilee, and I had that opportunity for that kind of quiet moment, to kind of reflect, to kind of pray, to do that. And I just snapped a picture and I thought, okay, I'll look at it later. And I was so excited when I actually opened it up and looked at it. Is here it is, the light reflecting, and it has a J. I feel like it was a J, speaking to me as Jill, but it's like I said, it's those quiet and those personal moments that you have, and those experiences that you'll have when you're in Israel, more than any place else that you could travel. One of my other favorite places, and we were kind of talking about this yesterday, Lori and I, when we were, Lori, Donna, Sarah, and I had the opportunity to speak beforehand. And one of my favorite places is the Mount of Beatitudes. This is where Jesus would have done the Sermon of the Mount. And this is where I come back to the site of tradition, or where we know that it actually happened. Now, the Mount of Beatitudes, they believe this is probably where he would have done the Sermon on the Mount. Not sure it's the exact spot, but there's this beautiful church that was built on it. And one of the things that we kind of talked about is there is a little bit of a difference for the Catholic traveler versus the Protestant evangelical traveler. For me, as a traveler, I love the opportunity to see the land. Very much part of my Protestant evangelical faith walk that I have is having the opportunity to stand in the place. I want to stand on the hillside where I know that Jesus likely could have been. We're doing this on Facebook Live. Everybody's seeing what's happening and what's out there and stuff. But you think back to a time when Jesus would have taught, when he would have preached, and he had thousands of people that followed him and followers that came and heard him speak. They didn't have Twitter at the time. They didn't have Facebook at the time that says, oh, here, Jesus is going to speak here. But it was that opportunity that these people, they just followed to listen to his teachings. And I had said, for me, the one time I was in church right after having come back from Israel. And that Sunday, it just so happened that my pastor was preaching on the Sermon on the Mount. And here I can think, and I can close my eyes as he's talking about it. I know what it was like to stand there on the hillside, to look at the Sea of Galilee, to feel the breeze coming up off of the sea. And, that's because I had the opportunity to be there and to see the places biblically that Jesus would have been and would have taught. Moving from there is you do have Topka, which is the one on the right. Topka is the place where Jesus would have done the multiplication of the fish and the loaves. And then the church of St. Peter's Primacy is here on the left-hand side. This would have been where Jesus would have welcomed the apostles back. This would have been where some believe this is where Jesus would have given Peter the keys to the church. From there, I went a little too fast. From there, Capernaum, which is one of my favorite sites. You have this beautiful synagogue that is still there. It isn't from the time of Jesus. It's about a fourth century synagogue, but very much like what it would have looked like at the time. This is where Jesus would have done a lot of his ministry. On the right, it looks like just kind of a pile of rocks. But this is Peter's mother-in-law's home. This is where they would have been. This is where the paraplegic would have been lowered into from the roof and been lowered in, and Jesus performed his miracle there. This is where the disciples would have lived, especially there along the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus would have. They call it the hometown of Jesus in terms of where he would have done a lot of his ministries. And there's a lot of different places throughout the Galilee, and I'm trying to give you a taste. I want you to be able to see a lot of the different places that you'll be there, but I also want you to be surprised when you go. I want you to be able to go and see other places that, Lori will put together that amazing itinerary for it. And one of the most special things is the opportunity to be there and have the opportunity for a baptism. You have Yard Meat, which is a baptismal site along the Jordan River. Again, this is a site of tradition. They believe it was, Jesus was baptized by John within the Jordan River. Where it would have been exactly, we're not exactly sure, but it's believed to have been somewhere along the Jordan. But you have the opportunity, you can rent the robes, you can be baptized, and you can do a full submersion baptism there at the Jordan River. And one of my favorite things is just the experience of being able to see others to be baptized, the joy, the excitement that people have, the singing, the worship, and the devotions that they have here at this site. And it's just such an amazing thing. And, one of the things I love so much about Israel is the connection. It's the connection to the other travelers. You meet people from around the world that are there for one reason. I mean, there's few other places that you travel to that you have that much spiritual connection that you go and you meet people for one reason. I can remember I went one time and I was with a group of journalists, and it was right after the tsunami hit Japan. And there was such devastation. And here were these Japanese travelers with their flag that are walking through Israel, and you have people coming up to them and hugging them and saying, wow, we're praying for you. We're praying for Japan. We're praying for what you're going through and stuff. And there was just such joy that they were sharing with somebody from all different places and all different walks of life. And then moving south, there's a little bit of spoiling coming up here. Is you do have the Dead Sea, but one of my favorite things is Masada. Masada is the fortress within the desert. Has an amazing story. We were laughing yesterday and talking about the fact that one of my things that I always wanted to do is walk up the snake path. And I can tell you, you don't have to walk the snake path when you're there. There's a great cable car that you can be part of, or you can do the snake path at the right in the morning to be able to see sunrise over the sea. But I had the opportunity, I was with this group of pastors, as I mentioned before, and the one gentleman, the one in the middle, I looked at him and I said, you've been here before. Do you want to do the snake path with me? And he was like, of course. So we went up and two others had joined us. Another pastor and his wife joined us. And I will tell you, I got about halfway through there and really thought I was going to die. And didn't think I was going to make it up to the top. And this pastor was amazing, just like encouraging. And we were, kind of singing together and everything. And, you get to the top and I was like, oh my gosh, I made it. I did it. And I was like, I'm taking the cable car down. And then he turned to me and he goes, do you want to go back down? Well, of course I did. So, we had the opportunity to run back down, but it's such an amazing site within Israel. It doesn't really necessarily have the biblical connection there. It is the place of the last Jewish revolt against the Roman soldiers. So really there's that opportunity just for the history of it, and to be able to experience it is an amazing thing. So I do always encourage to have Masada on the itinerary. But then after doing that, there's always opportunity and time for spoiling. And, the Dead Sea is an amazing place. One of the things we were kind of laughing about yesterday is I had said, one of the things that I hear from people all the time is, oh yeah, I hear that you float, but I won't be able to float. I'm going to tell you, everybody floats within the Dead Sea. It is just an amazing opportunity for just relaxation, for pampering, to have the opportunity to kind of cover yourself in mud, and when you take that mud off, your skin feels amazing. You can do the spa treatments, or you can just enjoy yourself within the sea, within the Dead Sea. One little tip I will give you, I always tell my groups that make sure the day before, and especially the day of, don't shave. So ladies, that means don't shave your legs. Men, it means don't shave those beards, because I will tell you, any tiny little cut will be felt when you walk into that sea. It is the highest concentration of salt water with salt in it, but it is just an amazing luxury experience that if you had the opportunity to go and to experience that, it's so much fun. And then moving back up a little bit to the north, more to central, to Jerusalem. Now, again, one of the things that I mentioned before is you have the luxury of size with Israel. So you really could be staying in Jerusalem, and you could go down and do Masada and the Dead Sea, or you could decide to stay overnight, one night in the Dead Sea area. And that's something that Lori will put together in the itinerary and decide which will make the most amazing itinerary for you, her clients. But Jerusalem is one of those places where I like to save it for last. It's kind of the crown jewel. It's the culmination of everything coming together in one place. And it's just such an amazing ancient place that has such a connection. And one of those places for me that is one of the best places for me is visiting the Western Wall. Having the opportunity to put your prayers in the wall. You'll see in the picture on the right, there's the prayers in the crevices. People come from all over the world to be able to pray here at the Western Wall, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Christian, whether you just are spiritual and you want the opportunity to sit, have the peaceful moments of, reflection and prayer. You can do that. And I know that, and it's really hard because you can't see anybody here in the audience, but for those of you that have been to Israel before, and I know there's a few of you, I want to give you this little bit of trivia. And those of you going, I want you to know this as well, that those prayers in the wall, so those prayers that you put in the wall, if you've already been before, what do you think happens to them? Do they just get thrown away when they fall onto the ground? They don't. They're actually carefully collected, and they're buried on the Mount of Olives. So those prayers that you made and those little notes that you tucked into the wall while they might not still be in the wall, they are still in Israel, and they're carefully taken and they're carefully buried on the Mount of Olives. So that's such a great opportunity, and I feel like that's something that I'm really always excited to know about, is those times that I've brought the prayers. And actually right now the Ministry of Tourism is doing a campaign where it's a virtual. Yes, we're not able to travel yet, but we still have our prayers that we want to put in the wall, or our intentions, and you actually can virtually submit your prayers, that they will print them off and they will put them in the wall for you right now. So it's a great campaign that we're in the midst of. So if you'd like to be able to submit prayers, you can do that with at the Western Wall as well. But from here, I just wanted to kind of take a walk through the city of Jerusalem, the streets of Jerusalem, and kind of the last days of Jesus, and the time for him to have been in Israel. Here is Dormition Abbey. It's also, it's a place, again, of tradition where they believe that this was the place of the Last Supper, where Jesus would have sat with his apostles that last time and spoken to his apostles. It's also the spot that they believe that Mary died and her earthly life ceased. It's, within Latin and within Catholic, when they say died, it generally translates to sleeping or falling asleep. So it's known also as the Basilica of the Assumption, or Dormition. So this is where Mary would have died and rose to heaven there. From there, one of my favorite places, and I keep saying my favorite place, because there really are so many different places in Israel, and there's so many different moments that I've had when traveling. But here it's the Church of All Nations here, but what I love is the Garden of Gethsemane. There's these beautiful olive grove. It sits right in front of the church, right beside the church there. But one of my places that I love, and you can actually arrange it, Lori can arrange it ahead of time, is there's this beautiful garden just across the street, an olive grove. These olive trees are thousands of years old. I mean, they could have been there during the time of Jesus. But they are thousands of years old, these olive trees. But it's this beautiful, peaceful garden that you can go and you can have a time to do devotion. You can have a time to do worship. I actually was there with a Catholic group one time, and they actually did mass in this beautiful little garden on the side. So it's one of my favorite places to be able to go and just have that quiet time, to be able to sit in the garden. You can see the old city in front of you above the walls of this garden, but at the Garden of Gethsemane, here at the bottom of the Mount of Olives. And from there, walking into the old city. Some people like to follow the Via Dolorosa, especially if there is a Catholic group. I know Lori's group is more of a Protestant group, but it's still nice to be able to kind of see those places where you can walk in the places where Jesus would have walked on his final hours, on his final path through the city. You'll see that they have these little things, especially in the first, in that middle picture, there's the round with the number on it. And this kind of takes you through the Via Dolorosa, through the city. Up until the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, it's a beautiful church. It is believed that through Catholic tradition, this is where Jesus was crucified and was buried. So it has that, it's a beautiful church that you can go through. This top left hand is where they believe the tomb would have been. But for the Protestant, more evangelical traveler, is the Garden Tomb. And again, this is a really special place. This is where they believe Jesus would have been crucified, where he would have died, and where he was buried, here at the Garden Tomb. This is a really great place that you can stop and do a worship service. You can do a communion service here at the Garden Tomb. They have these little special gardens throughout. You can, excuse me, you can also enter the tomb. So you'll see in the bottom left-hand picture is the picture of the face of the tomb that they believe this is where Jesus was. And then that top picture is the tomb itself, is inside the tomb. So you can actually go into the tomb. You'll see on the picture on the right-hand side, the groups that are waiting to go into. But this is a good place to be able to have a communion service. It's a good place to kind of reflect on just the opportunity that you've had through your time and through your travels to kind of walk in those places where Jesus was. Again, like I said, a great opportunity to have communion and to be able to do that within the Garden Tomb or within. But then here's a really interesting place. It's part of the Israel Museum. I'm going to focus first on the right hand and the bottom left hand picture. This is actually a replica of what the temple would have looked like during Jesus's time. So it's an opportunity to see those places that you've walked through the city in your time in Israel. So it gives you kind of that overview and overlook of where all the places were. And then as part of the Israel Museum, you'll see on the top left, it's just a structure, but it's actually part of the Museum for the Dead Sea Scrolls. So the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were found in a cave in Qumran, which is down in the southern area of Israel, very close to Masada. But the structure here, what is really neat about it is it's built in the way of the top of a clay pot. These scrolls were found in these clay pots. So you'll see here on the left, the top of what would be a clay pot. And this is here where the museum is for the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, one of the places that I feel like is just such a powerful and important place for us to visit, especially, and forgive me, but I mean, for things that are going on throughout our world and things that we've seen, and this is Yad Vashem. Yad Vashem is the Holocaust Museum. It is a memorial to those that went through the Holocaust, both as a memorial to those who have died, but also as a honorarium for those that were part of helping the Jewish people and helping their brothers. I mean, they talk about different places in Europe where there's entire villages that the Christians of the village hid the Jewish people and protected them from. And it's just a time in history where, you know, I mean, it's the ugliness, but then there's also the beauty in terms of what people did to stand up. And that top left-hand picture, what looks like just a lot of little black kind of squares, what that is it is pictures and photographs of people who were part of the Holocaust and who died in the Holocaust. The challenge that Yad Vashem has given themselves is they want to record every story of every person that went through the Holocaust. And I mean, it's a mighty task, and it's a huge task, because at some points entire families were wiped out, entire villages were wiped out, but they're really working to record the stories so that we don't forget the history of it. And Yad Vashem is just one of those places that it's just this powerful memorial to that bleak time in history. There's a great place within the campus of the museum where it's the righteous among the nations, and it's trees that were planted in honor of families and honor of individuals that risk their own life to save the Jewish people and to save their Jewish brothers and sisters. So the righteous among the nations is a great memorial as part of this overall memorial as well. Now, one of the other things I kind of wanted to talk about, and this is something Lori told me, this is what you all like. You love the opportunity to enjoy and experience the food. I think it's actually one of my favorite things. I feel like it's something that really connects you to a destination, a place. I mean, I can tell you, in Mexico, I love to go and eat the street food. I love to go and eat from the street vendor. In Israel, I love to go to the markets and be able to eat fresh in the markets. I am a vegetarian, so to me, Israel's heaven. But don't be scared for those of you that really like your meat, because you really have that. The Israel breakfast is are amazing. One of the things we were joking about is it's filled with like, that's going to be your dairy meal. There isn't going to be meat there, but there's amazing salads. There's eggs and all of those kind of things. And I can't wait to go to Israel and eat a salad every morning for breakfast. I don't make that here at my house. Like I totally could make salad for myself, but there's something about eating it for breakfast in Israel that is just like, it makes sense to me. But you'll have that opportunity for those unique experiences in terms of the food and the culinary. One of the interesting things with Israel is you have people who have come from all over the world and immigrated. They have brought their foods, their traditions, and all of that to one place. And it's really become this melting pot of flavors that have meshed and melded so well together. So you have the opportunity to really try these amazing things. Falafel is basically your everyday. We joke that pita with hummus is the equivalent of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich here in the US, but better. But you have the pita stands that you can have, you have the fresh fruits and vegetables, everything in Israel. They do not import any fruits or vegetables or anything like that. Everything is grown locally and everything is grown fresh. So it really speaks to the farm to table thing, because the farm to table thing in Israel is really not a thing. It's something that is what Israel is. It's been like that for hundreds of years. So you have that. And one of the other things, and when Lori mentioned she likes this, she's like after my own heart, the most amazing wines. I love the wines in Israel. They are really being recognized on a world stage now as some of the best wines in the world. They have wineries throughout the country, from north all the way down to the desert in the south, that you can go and experience. Basically, when you're in Israel, you're about 20 minutes from a winery wherever you are. So it's a really great opportunity that she can put together this amazing trip for you, that you can visit these amazing historical places, and in the evenings sit at a winery and enjoy a glass of wine, or in the afternoon sit and have your lunch at the winery. So really there's some amazing opportunities for wine there, as well as spices. One of the things that I really enjoy doing is that when I am traveling, I want to bring back a taste of the places that I've been, the spices, and really have that opportunity. So, going through the markets, you have the opportunities to try the different spices and bring them home with you. Za'atar is one of my favorite spices. It's a mixture of different that you can get in Israel. And then in terms of the markets itself, the markets, you have the opportunity that you have the old world markets that you kind of come to expect with a lot of these types of places, that you can go through the market. But you also have, who would have guessed this is Israel? This is right outside the main old city, the Mamila promenade there. You have the Gap. If you want to shop at the Gap, when you're in Israel, when you could do that here, but you have all of the different modern amenities, and that's one of the things that I talked about, is that you have the ancient next to the modern, and it really gives you that opportunity to see both together, and to be able to see those places. So, and I wanted to leave time for questions. I know that I could literally talk to you for hours, but I wanted you to have time to ask questions if there's things that you wanted to know, that Sarah and I are both here, that we can talk about specific things for Israel, as well as Laurie and Donna are here to be able to talk about things specifically to what Lori's doing in putting together these amazing trips, and a trip like this to Israel.
Thanks, Jill. For the amazing.
I was just going to jump right into two questions that I didn't get to in the chat box.
Yeah.
One of which I think Jill will know better than I do. So someone asked if they would love to be baptized in the Jordan River, but they've already been baptized. Is that possible? Okay.
Yes, you can definitely. I know myself, I've been baptized. I was baptized within the Catholic Church. I was then baptized later when I joined the Protestant Evangelical Church, and have had the opportunity to do baptism at the Jordan River as well. So absolutely, even if you've been baptized before, you can still be baptized at the Jordan River.
And we should bring as part of our group, we would need to bring someone to baptize us, right?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, to have somebody that can baptize you, that would be really important to have that.
Okay. Yeah, because it's not like somebody there stationed to baptize. Okay.
Yeah, there's not anybody there that's stationed that can baptize. However, like I said, I mean, it depends on, and I don't want to get into the theology of everybody with the different denominational backgrounds and everything, but I mean, I've been with people where they've done baptisms with, like, I mean, Lori, you're a deacon in your church,
Mhm.
having the opportunity that you can do the baptism for. But it is just a profession of faith. And I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to step on anybody's belief system or religious system, because I know that each denomination is a little bit different. But I have been with like church leaders that have done the baptisms as well.
Okay.
Thank you. A few other questions. I'm just going to go in order. The weather. Jill, I can talk about it, or you can talk about it.
It's up to you. I mean, in terms of the overall weather for Israel, it really depends on what time of the year that you go. One of the things that Lori had asked me just yesterday is, what's the best time of the year to go? And I really do recommend probably spring or fall. The weather's a little bit milder. It's very nice weather. Uh, Summertime is just unbelievably hot. I've been there with groups in January and February, and it's really not that bad. I mean, you're also talking to a girl that lives in Chicago. So I mean, I'm used to some cold weather, but I could wear a light jacket. Although there sometimes is snow in Jerusalem in January. So.
Exactly. Next question is about, dining in Israel's specialties. I can just jump right in about this. I mean, as Jill mentioned in her presentation, one of the beauties of Israel is, the culture and the food. It's the melting pot of so many different people coming from all over the world. So you'll find, so many unique cuisines there, and it's all amazing. So, some of the things that Israel is really known for is obviously the falafel and the hummus and those Middle Eastern dishes and the fresh pita breads. But one of the most famous things I think Israel is known for is the Israeli breakfast. So any hotel that you stay in, or even in, go to a cafe or a restaurant, you want the whole deal. You want to make sure to wake up in time to experience that. It's nothing like you find in America. You may see pancakes, but it's amazing. It's wonderful. Many different dishes. You'll probably be full for the majority of the day. And then as well, you'll want to make sure that you go to one of the many famous outdoor marketplaces. The two most popular ones are in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem. It's like walking into ancient times blended with some modern cafes as well. You'll see the buckets of spices, as you saw in the picture, to the fresh pitas coming out of the oven, and the fruits and vegetables which were probably picked from the farm the day before that morning. As Jill mentioned, things are not imported, so the fruits that you're tasting are going to be like a strawberry that you've never had before, because it's grown in the time that in season that it's supposed to. So yeah, food is a huge part of the culture, a huge part of the country. You will never go hungry. It is unbelievable. And another thing that there's actually a lot of in the country to experience that you can build into the itinerary is, having a dining experience of the many cultures in Israel. So you can do an in-home hospitality with an Israeli. There's also the Druze culture that live more in the north of Israel. So you can have Druze cuisine and you get to learn about their culture and where they came from. They are not originally from Israel. And taste their food. Down south, you can have a Bedouin experience and try Bedouin food. So you can really have culinary experiences in any parts of the country, and through the food, you really get to experience the different cultures and religions of the place as well. So I think that was pretty good about food, unless Jill, if you have anything to add.
You're exactly right. So absolutely.
Great. Next question is about dress code. Can you wear shorts? there?
So in terms of dress code, really one of the things that I always say is be comfortable. Wear what's comfortable for you. Wear comfortable shoes. This isn't a time for fashion and making sure that you're this fashionista wearing like high heels or sandals or anything like that. Wear what's comfortable for you.
Yeah.
However, I will say that there are some churches that you do need to make sure you are not wearing shorts. No shorts on men, no shorts on women. Women, it's okay to wear like a skirt or something like that. And also no showing of shoulders. With these ones, your guide will always tell you the day before, like, please know that we're going to these sites. The other thing is, like, I always recommend, especially for women, if you just bring a wrap. So if it is, a really warm time of the year and you want to wear a tank like sleeveless, wear a wrap around your shoulders, and that's fine. Or if you have shorts on, tie the wrap around your waist. I've seen men do that as well, who have tied the wrap around their waist as well. So, for the most part, most of Israel, it is very, modern in terms of the way that you dress or anything like that. There's no need for like ultra conservative dress or anything, but some of the churches you will, and the guide will always let you know beforehand, the night before. But like I said, just bringing a shawl is a great thing to kind of do, to be able to help with that. So
exactly. And kind of jumping into the next question about, are the seasons in Israel the same order as the US? Yes, they are. The summers there are extremely hot, but the kind of post-summer, early fall, and spring are really pleasant, probably warmer than the northeast part of the US, but really nice and pleasant. It's mostly a desert country, so the day will be a lot warmer, and then at night it can get very, very cold. So we always recommend to dress in layers, because if you're out all day and not returning to your hotel, if you're during the day, you could be wearing shorts and a tank top, and at night you need, a pretty nice jacket. So definitely dressing in layers is the best, because you can really have kind of extreme temperatures from morning to night in one day. So, but yes, they do follow the same pattern as the US in terms of, warm during the summer, same here. And, winters there can get pretty cold, from, I would say, like December through February can get pretty cold in the evenings or during the day. Days obviously tend to be warmer. But they do very rarely get snow, maybe once every other year, but very few, inches. But those tend to be the rainier months also. They don't get a lot of rain either, like we do here in the States, but anything is possible. Okay. Are there opportunities to do art and culture with the local as it was performed during the time of Jesus?
There are some different places that you can actually experience that. One great place is in Nazareth. There's Nazareth Village. So you had the opportunity to kind of see what it would have been like in terms of weaving at the time, and weaving textiles, things like that. And it really, it's almost kind of like the performance art of being able to be there and what it would have been look like during biblical times. Some of the other interesting things that you can do is that there are archaeological digs that are always available. The archaeological digs, there's active digs that are happening throughout the country at any given time. And like one in particular I can think of is Magdala, which I didn't speak on Magdala here, but Magdala is a brand new site within Israel. It's believed to be where Mary Magdalene would have lived. It's along the Galilee. They found a first century synagogue there. It's one of only 6 first century synagogues from the time of Jesus. And you have the opportunity to participate in an archaeological dig there. So there's some different things that you can do, some different cultural experiences that, even to, I know it's kind of a little more of an arts and craft question, but like there's opportunities that you can work with a chef, so that in the morning you can go in and pick the vegetables, the ingredients, spices, and in the afternoon cook it. So you have that opportunity for it. So there's a lot of different cultural experiences that you can have within Israel that really can give you that opportunity to have that local hands-on experience. I mean, as well as there's volunteer experiences. I had a group there that we volunteered with a place that we packaged rice and packaged for a soup kitchen kind of thing. And we had so much fun. We actually made it a competition and who could do most and the teams and stuff. But it was that opportunity, like, 'cause I mean, I think all of us, when we travel, one of the things that we want to experience is we want those authentic experiences. And I hate to use the authentic word because I mean, I feel like it gets thrown around a lot, but you really do. You want the opportunity to really have the immersive experience wherever you are, whether you're in Africa, in Europe, in Israel, and you want those immersive experiences that you can really talk to the locals and experience with the locals.
Exactly. And I think, as we mentioned with food, is obviously a great way. In the two main marketplaces, outdoor marketplaces in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, you can do a really wonderful guided culinary tasting tour. So you'll get to learn about, the history of the market and the city that it's in, and then also taste, food from each of the different countries and, learn about how Israel became such a melting pot. So not only are you getting to eat delicious food, and being immersed in the market and the history of it, so it's such a great immersive experience as well. The next question, and someone had asked a question previously in the presentation that I answered about volunteer opportunities. So Jill just mentioned one. There's another one through the organization that's really popular in Israel called Leket Israel, where you go to farms and it's basically farmers that donate like a portion of food or crops on their land to be picked. So you get to have the picking experience, and then it's being packaged and donated to people in need. So that's a fun kind of hands-on activity. You can plant trees, a volunteer opportunity to plant trees through an organization called JNF, which is Jewish National Fund, which obviously the more trees in a country, the more helpful it is for just oxygen and greenery as well. And several other opportunities, that we could help Lori find for the group. The next question is about the safety of the country.
It's my favorite question. It is. Like, I feel like some people like kind of want to shy away from it and everything, but I will say in terms of safety, Israel is extremely safe as a country. I mean, one thing about Israel is they value life above anything else, whether it's, the citizens, it's tourists, whatever, they value the life and the sanctity of life. So it's really important that safety is a very important thing. Speaking from personal experiences and the fact that, obviously I've been to Israel a number of times, but there's been a number of times too that I've gone and I've been on my own. My very first trip to Israel, I did not speak Hebrew, and I still don't speak Hebrew. I've worked with Israel for 15 years and I should speak it. I don't. I think I saw somebody say, can you learn phrases? It's not necessary, but like little phrases, you can easily learn little phrases. And I think it's fun. I think guides like to teach you that too. But I was in Tiberias and I realized my camera battery died and I needed a new battery. I didn't even think twice about walking into town by myself, not speaking the language or anything like that, just because I've already felt so safe within the country and I felt so safe walking around. So here I did. I walked into town by myself, and along the way I ended up meeting a gentleman that wanted to help me, and like he directed me and brought me to the camera shop. And then, the guy in the camera shop, he was like, no, this isn't the right battery. And I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm talking about. And he was like, I am telling you, it's not the right battery. Well, he was right. I was wrong. But I mean, they weren't trying to take advantage. They wanted to really help and everything like that. So in terms of safety, yes. I mean, I live in Chicago. There's many places and there's places within Chicago that if I had friends and family visiting, I just wouldn't take them there because it's not a safe area. And that's the same in Israel. There's places that it's not the tourist places. It's not. So anywhere that you're going to be, anywhere that Lori would take you, it's very safe and you can feel comfortable and you can feel confident walking around by yourself. I mean, I'll go to dinner with friends and come home late and walk through Tel Aviv by myself and not think anything of it. So you really can feel very comfortable in terms of the safety of Israel.
And And last question, I think we touched on this, but someone was asking about accommodations and currency exchange. Just quickly, the accommodations, there's all the same level star classes of hotels as you find here, you know, the luxury 5-star, all the way down to hostels. Hostels are, I mean, I don't think your group would necessarily stay in a hostel, but it's everything in between, with great, amazing hotels options. New ones are opening left and right. In terms of the currency exchange, the exchange rate tends to hover around a 3.6 exchange rate, you know, give or take the day. They take most every US credit card there. Everywhere you pretty much takes credit card. You know, you can, the banks there, they have ATMs all over. You can put in your, you know, obviously let your bank know that you're traveling abroad, but you can get, you know, put your ATM card in there and get out the Israeli shekel, is what it's called. People do also take American dollars, but credit cards are taken pretty much everywhere there. So yeah, I think that is all of the questions that we got.
Ladies, we actually have 2 people who have their hands raised. If you have your hand raised, please take the moment very quickly and post your questions in the Q&A area for the ladies to be able to answer your questions. Unfortunately, we're not able to answer your question when you raise your hand.
And I see there's a question in the chat about staying at a kibbutz, and I think Sarah answered that as well, that yes, you can, and they are available.
There are, I mean, there's a kind of variety of kibbutz experiences. The kibbutz is like a communal living experience that was created and born in Israel many years ago. And today there's kind of the different variety of them. Some are still kind of that old school kibbutz where everything is shared, from living accommodations. They have a dining room where they eat communally. It's like the way of life, everything is shared. And then you have ones that are also, you know, people have their independent homes and their independent kitchens and, you know, earn their own money, but kind of live in like a gated community with a shared preschool or a shared school. So there's a variety. And on a lot of the kibbutzes, you can find guest houses, or some of them even have hotels that, you know, feel just like a regular hotel, or you can have more of a little guest house experience, and you can dine in the dining hall with the members of the kibbutz. You can have volunteer in the kitchen for an hour one day to help prepare the meal, and they'll have tours around the kibbutz to teach you just about the way of life and the history of the kibbutz. So yes, there's definitely the kibbutz experience.
Jill and Sarah, do we go anywhere particular on the website to put in our prayer request?
So on the Israel.travel, which is one of our main sites.
I put the link in the chat for everybody.
Okay, yeah, so there should be on the very top on the banner, it may scroll to a few different things, but one of them should be the campaign for writing your note. Correct, Jill, or is there?
No, I believe that's correct. There's also, you can also go to any of our social media channels.
Yeah.
That they do have they have that as well. Yeah, I have my phone and I just looked at it really quick, and there is, it is a scrolling with the main banner ad, but it does have the Western Wall e-note that you can do. So if you don't see it right away, give it a second.
Okay. And then yesterday we spoke, as I wait for some other questions to come up, we spoke about an ideal itinerary, like how long a trip to Israel should be. So I think, Jill, you're saying that maybe about 10 days or so.
I think 10 days is generally a really good itinerary. It gives you the opportunity to see most of the country and most of the major sites that you'd like to see. Again, like I said, Israel, it's the luxurious side. So things are relatively close. I mean, you're going to lose, essentially it's 2 days that you lose in terms of travel by the time you travel and stuff. So that gives you 8 days on the ground, a 10-day itinerary, and really gives you very full, that you're going to see north to south and everywhere in between pretty much.
Okay. Donna, do we have any more questions out there?
I don't see any more questions.
Okay, so if there are no questions, I think we're just a little bit over time. Yeah, a little bit over time right now. I want to thank you, Jill and Sarah. You're like the dynamic duo here. You've got me so excited about going to Israel. Like I had previously planned a trip and I thought I knew a lot, but you have given me so much more information to kind of personalize this trip. And you guys kind of, you listen to what I was saying and what the type of trip I envisioned with the cultural experiences, how you want those quote unquote authentic experiences. And I try to put that in each and every trip that I do, regardless of where we are around the world, and the food and the wine and the spas, because, you know, although Israel, most people were going for the spiritual aspect, it's great to combine some of the spiritual aspect and then you're going to have some fun on top of it as well. So it's a great trip, no matter what level of
It
religion or
absolutely.
spirituality you want to be. It's not total like we're going to go to a week-long revival. You know what I mean? So it's a you can go as deep as you want to. Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. I mean, you can definitely see all of the different biblical sites, but it doesn't have to be just religion. It can be that culture. It can be the food. It can be the wine. I mean, and you said yesterday you love wine, and your travelers love wine. Well, amazing, because you can do that, and you can. So it doesn't mean that you're just going to be in churches and praying the entire time. So it really gives you that. And you know, one of the things, if I can't stress enough, is the thing that I mean, above everything that I love about traveling in Israel is the opportunity to connect with people from all over the world. Not just the Israelis, but the other travelers. I mean, you're there for a common experience, a common goal and stuff. And having that trip, I mean, I have hanging in my office, I used to have a picture, and it was a group of, if I can always remember correctly, they were, I believe, Nigerian refugees that moved to Ireland, and they were in Israel traveling. And here they were, like, we're all just standing together at the Tapka, and we have a picture of all of us, you know, with our like arms around each other, just like, you know, hanging out like friends. And like, that's the important thing, because that's what you want in travel. You want to expand your world. You want to, you know, teach yourself more. I mean, and my nieces and nephews, like, I want them to see that the world is small so that they can see all of these places. And Israel just brings it all together. And I love that.
Yeah, yes, 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 it does. It's so great. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and your enthusiasm of Israel. We will be talking again. I'll be reaching out to you, Jill. I'll be reaching out to you,
Please.
Sarah. Before, I know we may have lost, we haven't lost that many people. I do one last poll at the end. I want to find out, now that you've learned so much about Israel, who is interested in going and when do you want to go to Israel? So sorry, I know we've lost a couple of people, but we still got a few that are on. So I'll give you about 30 seconds to answer this poll, and this will help us begin planning, because I was speaking with Jill and Sarah yesterday, and folks are booking Israel out like to 2022, 23. I mean, things are booking up. So I want to get on this process soon and start planning so we can get the best choices of our first choices of hotels and experiences, and not be like, oh, well, that's sold out. So, so let me know. It looks like there's definitely good interest here. I'll give you about 10 more seconds to respond. Okay, hopefully you guys can find your button. All right, so I'm going to end the polling soon. I think we got a good response. And so let's see. Let's share the results for those of you on. So we have about a good, we have enough to make a group, you know? So we have about 70 people said they wanted to go. And it looks like the spring of 2022 is where most people would be interested in going. So the summer's going to be hot. So it'll be like the spring or the fall of 2022. And I think I can definitely get started on working on this trip and getting it out there, and getting folks excited again about travel, to get you something to look forward to, because I know just anticipating a trip just does so much for the soul, knowing that, hey, you're at work and someone gets on your nerves, like, that's okay. I'm going on a trip this week. I don't care what you say. So anyhow, without further ado, I just want to thank Jill and Sarah. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for responding to my request. This was an amazing, amazing webinar. Thank you, Donna, for also being our moderator, for keeping us. I call you the hype woman, for working at the chat and the Q&As. Thank you to all of you participants for joining us week after week. You keep coming back, and I'm so appreciative. So those of you who are on Zoom, those of you on Facebook, thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If I don't have the answer, you guys know I got 2 experts right here that can answer any of your questions about Israel. So the next 2 weeks, just wanted to make an announcement about Wanderlust Wednesday. The next 2 weeks, we are off. So there are no Wanderlust Wednesdays the next 2 weeks. We do come back in on November 11th. And in November, we're going to Belize. So a country in Central America that many people don't know about, but it's absolutely beautiful. So we're going to keep that Wanderlust alive while you're staying at home. So as always, be blessed, be well, and I'll see you next time, God willing. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.